gavel?
I don't.
But, all right. Zach is here. Who do you want to see? You want to see them?
I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a special public meeting on February 15th, starting a little bit after 3 o'clock. Under Open Public Meetings Law, the notice of this meeting was sent to the Cape May Star and Wave, Cape May County Planning Herald, and posted on the city website in the city in City Hall. Does any member have any belief that we are operating outside of the Open Publics Meeting Act? Hearing none, I will ask for pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Judy, roll call, please.
Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Here.
Mr. Testa.
Here.
Mr. Hammerin. Looks like Ms. Pisagno and Ms. Wilson-Stridick are...
And this is an advisory review. And gentlemen, would you all introduce yourself, please?
Paul Dietrich, City Manager and City Engineer for Cape May City.
I'm Rob Conley from Robbie Conley Architect, the architects on the project.
I'm John Viscano, also from Robbie Conley Architect.
Gentlemen, you can go ahead and start your presentation to us.
Just real quick, we appreciate you, everyone taking this opportunity. I know you guys canceled your regularly scheduled meeting, but we appreciate you guys coming here on a special meeting. We're trying to bring this project back forward and get on a time frame so that we can receive your recommendation, submit to SHPO to go through their process, and you know, trying to be able to possibly put this out to bid in late summer to have a possible fall construction. So that was why we kind of asked for you guys to come together today, as opposed to waiting to your regular meeting in March, and just to help slow us down. So we do appreciate doing this. I know the architects have spent, and Chief Deacon has spent a lot of time already working with, I know John and Warren and Corbin over the last year or so in working on the plans. I think we've got a plan that has gone through a lot of the iterations, and hopefully we've got it to a point where it's something that everyone can support and make a recommendation for us to go to the full HPC. And I'll now turn it over to the architects that have everything. I know the mayor, he's joined us on the Teams call here, so if we have any questions, but I just wanted to pass it on.
Is the mayor going to be part of your presentation?
I think he was not directly.
Wagging his head no. So
if there's
Okay.
if there's any direct questions, I think that during the presentation, and I'm sure if we miss anything along the way,
you'll be reminded.
He'll catch us up on if we've missed something along the way. But hopefully we'll catch everything before then. Thank you.
Okay, like Paul had said, we've already really been working with the committee from the very beginning on the design of the building. Different people, I know Jake's a member of the task force. So we've tried to design the building based on what your wants are on the design of the building, and work that in as we move forward. So basically, I'll give you the broad stroke and then let John Descano get into some of the details. So basically what we're doing, we're looking at a masonry constructed building, brick on the outside, and basically we're going to go with the, let's see if I can do this, a red brick here similar to what we have at the firehouse, which is a sample we've brought here. The accents will be a black brick, which is what we have here. And basically, the other portion is what we're talking about right now is the roof. When we had the meeting 2 weeks ago, it was suggested that we go to a cedar shake roof up there, which is what we're showing on the drawings at this time. But we are still searching for a composite material slate roof, something that will be acceptable by the board and will actually look like slate. And the main reason for that is because we really truly feel that a masonry building constructed in the 1890s would have probably had a slate roof on it, not a cedar shake shingle roof. So we're looking at that, but we're trying to get actual samples, and we want something that's going to actually look like a slate. A lot of these do not, and we don't want to put something on there that doesn't look like the true material. We want to get as close to the real thing as possible. If we could do the real thing, we would, but there's the cost of it and the cost of the waste, and just trying to find somebody to install real slate on a building today is almost impossible.
If I can interrupt you for a second, we've been through those searches ourselves, trying to help applicants, and we've had samples sent to us, and we really didn't find anything that we felt we could approve, but
I had
you
one.
might have more luck.
I had one several years ago when we were doing a police station in the city of Woodbury that looked like real slate. I can't find that sample. I think I found that company, and they're supposed to be dropping samples off to me on Monday. If I agree that it does actually look like slate, then we will bring it down to the board, but we won't make that change without everybody getting a chance.
A bit of concern or connection to how you're going to relate to doing that final decision. The application here is marked as conceptual, which is a little strange for us with an advisory report, because the ordinance requires you to submit and for us to deliver a report to the city. It looks to me like there are a number of things, including this quest for the slate, that might require our continued participation as you go through the design phase. So we might wind up delivering you a preliminary report, but we might also have something else to say as a follow-up for what's going
The way I look
on.
at it is it's a city project, and it's the same thing as with the firehouse. When we made some choices of materials in the firehouse during construction, they were, of course, put in front of members of the board to make sure that it would be acceptable if we made any changes. And even some of the things that we, like for instance, the siding on the building, prior to us telling the contractor to go ahead with that siding, we wanted to make sure that it was approved. Because this is a city building, and of course, we do want it to meet all of your requirements and you know, be something that everybody can be on board with.
And this is also interesting because you proposed new construction, and you're talking about the substitute materials, and that's in an area that we're really focused on. I think, as Tom just pointed out, really focused on the availability and usability of substitute materials, but now not on an older building,
Right.
but on a new constructed building, admittedly in the historic district and next to historic buildings. But I think that may open up an opportunity for further consideration of
And
the
that's really
material.
what we want, is we understand this is a new building, but we want it to look as authentic as we can without it looking like it was built then. We want it to meet that flavor of the city, and we want it to be contributing to the city. So, and that's where we're at, so. So as soon as we do get materials that we are comfortable with, we will then share them with Paul and the mayor, and if they, and council, and if they feel comfortable, then we'll bring it in front of you also to make sure that you're comfortable also.
But in that it's a city project, we're not really offering a certificate of appropriateness, we're just an advisory position.
Yes.
So, I mean, and at this point, I know there's some time limits that they're concerned about, and I believe it's just an approval of like the overall design and not the minutia, if I'm correct?
Yes, and you could probably even start on a lot of aspects of this before you really have to finalize what shingle you're going to put on the roof,
Exactly.
things like that.
Exactly. We've got time for that, but we do want to get this ball rolling because we have to get in front of the state and get their approval before we can move into bidding the project and getting that. We really want to move forward with all of that. So that's why we're here today, and that's why we've been working with the board the whole time, just to make sure that, you know, we are giving you what you're looking for.
We sort of interrupt you here. I'll let you continue with your presentation.
Really, where we do have the siding materials on on the building. We're going to be using the same materials that we used on the firehouse. The windows are going to be the same windows we used on the firehouse. The doors are going to be the same doors we used on the firehouse, with the exception of the overhead doors. And we are looking at the overhead doors, at least the ones along the street side, to be cottage-look overhead doors, to give it a little bit more of a style. And I believe we sent you samples of about what we're looking at there. The ones on the back are probably going to be regular overhead doors on the back side, because you're not really going to see them from the street, and the residents won't really see that much. At this point, John, I'm going to turn it over to you. I think there's some details that you may want to go through, and I know lighting fixtures and some of that we want to talk about, and that we've given you samples of. So.
We did submit as part of the packet some proposed lighting, light fixtures, brackets that we, so far have looked at. Just to get back to the design here, we're going for, the Second Empire style, which is undoubtedly, part of Victoriana. The flavor of this is prevalent throughout Cape May and definitely within the immediate vicinity of this building. You see this type of detailing. We do, as Rob mentioned, we want to have a brick building. This is a city building, it's a police station, so we thought brick was appropriate. So if you don't mind, I'll put it up to the board.
Just give him the mic.
I'm sorry. So we're looking at a base course and then a water table. And thus far, we've considered a modular brick, which is a little larger than a standard brick, just as the base to ground the building. And then we would continue with the red brick that Robbie showed you, with a double soldier accent course running through in this black. Additionally, we did these build-out bays. They would overhang on the second floor, and then below them, just to complete the thought back down to the ground, we would go to some sort of a Flemish bond using the same brick. That would be below the bump-out bays in these areas. And then carrying straight up through into the roof, these dormers with the eyebrow roof. We're looking at perhaps copper for the roofing material on that, because it is a curved material. Copper is conducive to that shape. And again, continue with some of the Second Empire detailing with the iron grills. We thought perhaps just on the tower would be appropriate. We believe if we ran it across the entire top of the mansard, it may become too busy. I mean, certainly we would look to your input on that detail. Yeah, and then the brackets, like I mentioned, we would do dental brackets and then groupings of somewhat of a more decorative bracket, below the roof eave. We would have a frieze board below that, a soldier course at the behest of Warren. A couple weeks ago, he asked if we could incorporate another soldier course underneath the frieze. And then additionally, within the roof, Warren had asked us to consider changing the pattern of the shingle just as a decorative element running through that. And if you walk out of this building and look across the street and look to your left, there's, the shingles do, in fact, have this variation of shape. Is there anything here that you've seen that perhaps I didn't mention that you may have a question on? I'm just trying to give you the 30,000-foot view, more or less, at this point.
Can I open it to questions from the board members?
Absolutely, sure.
Okay. And feel free to just jump back in if something comes to your mind.
Okay.
Would anybody care to start?
I always seem to be the guy since I start over here, that we'll work our way from, from left to right. Overall comment, with one exception, I'm going to say, I think it's a nicely designed structure that does qualify as the junior brother of the firehouse, consistent with that type of architecture. I like the materials choices. I do like the variations, and particularly the way the brick variations are being sought. If I have one reservation, and I'm probably not going to be joined by my fellow commissioners, but if I have one reservation, I would say that this building has one tower too many. And the reason I say one tower too many is because when I go up Franklin Street from the firehouse through the Sturdy Savings, through the tower and the steeple we're about to put on the AME church, to the two churches that are nearby, it's just tower, tower, tower. And my problem is I think we have a lot of height and too many towers. If I were to design this building, I would, if you will, eliminate the Second Empire Tower. It seems, would somebody tell me, is that a 50-plus foot tower? Is that, we're talking, because you didn't have anything beyond the third floor here, so I kind of sussed it up to about 50, 52 feet, something in that
That's a pretty good
vicinity.
approximation.
Yeah. Again, and this is my personal view, it's not necessary to have a tower on this building. It looks stately and important enough, and I grant you that something could be done to emphasize the corner of St. John and Lafayette, and I think the tower is one way to do that. But I would do something that was not as tall and not as prominent as that tower. It's, to me, just as I said, one tower too many. And that really is, well, it's a big piece. Overall, I think that the design is one that is very worthwhile and worthy of a new construction.
And just, we actually did look at that. We did actually look at getting rid of the tower. And my personal opinion, when we looked at the building without the tower, was, to me, it just looked like a rooming house.
A rooming house,
A rooming house. Or a-
pretty fancy rooming house.
Yes, it didn't look to me like a city building.
I mean, there are ways of making public buildings look public, and I grant you it's a,
Normally, it's a grand staircase or something like
Right.
that, which you can't do anymore with handicap accessibility.
I knew
with
that's where you were
barrier-free.
going.
But,
Yeah,
so I think we do have a copy. of the
when the chief got up to leave, I knew exactly where he was.
you know, it's always the case that when you come here to this final thing, other things have been said beforehand that some of us are not aware of.
Yeah, the chief had asked previous, when we started to talk about the building and the design, what if we didn't have the tower? So I went ahead at his request. We didn't include it as part of the submission. And it was where we had-
Right.
You know, the reason for the tower.
Lower the roof a little.
There are many reasons. Firstly, it's just the corner piece, it enters that corner. It's
Sure.
more or less the fulcrum.
I think we could
Completely,
out of it, make it a little bit lower.
Certainly,
Trying to
we
look
could
at
do
some of the
something
pictures.
that articulates that as a tower, but without the height.
yeah, that's the point I'm really making. I think you have a building. It is, it's going to be situated on those small lots at the corner of St. John and Lafayette. And there's no doubt you want to emphasize the corner, as you have by the doors. And so it's a double. As I say, I would cap it lower than the large tower you have.
And actually, that's something we were just talking about. Maybe we'll take a look and see what we can do about keeping that tower there, but cutting down the height of it substantially. I mean, the bottom of the tower really has to be above the roof for it to work, but maybe we don't need that 10-foot of roof up there. Maybe we can cut that down a little bit
Yeah.
and still make it look to scale.
Actually, if you look at the John McCreary house right there, you can see it sort of does that.
Yes.
It gets you that height, but not the
It gets us that-
extra segment.
Exactly. So we might be able to do something with that, and we will definitely study that and take a look at
It would be something that, with respect to us delivering an advisory report, whether my colleagues would agree with it or not, I would ask that an advisory report ask for consideration for a reduction or redesign of the tower.
of the tower.
Of the tower. I mean, it seems to me that you've been through it, maybe without one and maybe with something a little smaller, so it's not
So
that hard
maybe we can find something
to
in the
do.
middle that works, and
Other than that, I
we can definitely take a look at.
think that the only other questions I would have had were not to this conceptual side. It would be other more detailed things we would see if we had, excuse me, if we had had a site plan, for example, in front of us, along with landscaping plans and location of HVAC and backup generators and things like that.
I can tell you, the HVAC, all of the HVAC equipment that would typically be on the ground will actually be up on the roof in this area.
Yeah.
And will be screened with probably lattice work up there. And this area up here will actually be a usable deck area for the police department.
So it would seem from your, from your plans. And backup generators?
Backup generator, that we're still working on. There will definitely be a backup generator. We're working with the city's engineer on where that's going to be able to, well, actually,
Well, no,
Sure,
with,
the other city engineers. This,
There's really, because of, there are some limitations as you move into the parking area beyond that. The containment area within the old JCP&L has a wall containment, they call it the bathtub. Where
right, the pollution control containment, yeah.
structural
Yeah.
support in there. So most likely the generator is going to be tucked closer to the building. And if you look on the right side elevation, if you see the man door, there's two, I'll call them windows to the right of that.
So-
They're faux windows. They're windows, but they're not.
So that's on the east side, the right profile.
It's on the opposite, not on the street.
Not on the St. John Street side.
Not on the St. John.
Yeah, it's opposite
And
St.
you know, so probably the generator might fit right within that area, close up to the building.
And it's probably,
screened, and
probably, I was going to say a gratuitous comment, but it's a generator and it's the police department, so it ought to be secure, right?
yes, yes. So it'll probably have some sort of a fence enclosure around it with landscaping. We definitely want to, one of our thoughts earlier was to actually put it in a separate like building like they do in Williamsburg, et cetera. But because of that basin, we can't really do that.
Yeah.
So we're going to probably keep it up close to the building and try to screen it as much as we can with landscaping, fencing, so it doesn't detract from
Yeah.
the look of the building.
And I know we're here, and I just had a question for Paul, for the city manager. If you would just update us, please. I mean, obviously, you're here for conceptual approval. You're ready to move in terms of going out for bids and getting this moving along. Would you just update us on the status of the lots? No, all permissions have been secured in terms of using the lots?
There's two sets of permissions that we're looking at. One is the land diversion with Green Acres. So there's some Green Acres parcels. We have received preliminary approval from the DEP for that. We have to submit a final survey, a final appraisal, and some title documentation, and then it can go to the final submission to get the Green Acres submission. The other is the coordination with JCP&L and HUD and the school and, the Housing Authority, and just we understand that they're in that last step of getting that signed off. So those will be hurdles that obviously we're trying to move things in parallel, and that's where we were kind of waiting, we've been holding off on bringing this back until we knew exactly where some of those were, and we feel that we're on a parallel course that by the time we're ready to go out to bid, we'll have, before we go out to bid, we need the Green Acres diversion completed, we need the JCP&L.
When you say the Green Acres diversion, you mean the swap?
The swap.
The swap.
Yes.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, Paul, you're saying you don't see that there really, shall we say, important impediments or substantial impediments to getting that done?
And that's why we were waiting to know all of that before we started this process back moving forward.
Good.
And because we feel that we're on a parallel track to be able to have, the SHPO approval, make sure the Green Acres diversion, the land swap, and the JCP&L all worked out by summertime so that we can go out to bid. And obviously, we have to have all three of those things.
I think it's very helpful because it's really difficult to build a building on which you don't have permission to build
Permission
it.
to do it. But we need those, but we have, and that's kind of that's why the Lafayette Street Park kind of had stopped, because it's waiting on the same thing. But, just in parallel, we've got the engineer working on the final permitting plans to submit for a CAFR permit for the park. We don't need a CAFR permit for the police station. That's why we can kind of move forward with the police station in advance of the park, because the park has to wait for the CAFR permit, the police station doesn't. So that's starting to move in the same parallel path.
Thank you for the update. Very helpful.
If that, hope that covers
It does. Yeah.
And so as long as everything goes according to plan, we should be in good shape. That's why you didn't see this last summer, because we didn't know where we were.
Done? Sure. Okay.
So as Jim anticipated, some of us are quite supportive of the tower. I'm one of those. I do see that maybe lowering it a bit might be a way to align around. As Steve said, I'm sorry, as Kevin said, for example, the John McCreary House is a great example, right? So actually, we've had a number of discussions. Thank you for coming and seeing us in our reviews on Tuesday mornings to take a look at this. I think this is maybe the third or fourth iteration I've personally seen. And one of the big, I'd say, discussions has been around the roofing material. So I decided to launch a little unscientific but personal research project. So I spent several hours on the internet researching public buildings in the United States that were Second Empire with mansard roofs, and looking at what makes most sense, a wood shingle roof or a slate roof. I was really surprised by the results of my research. I found 30 public, and I was looking only at buildings that were public buildings that were made of masonry, because this is clearly a masonry building for all kinds of durability reasons and all that. I was surprised by the results. All 30 of them had slate roofs, every one of them.
Yes.
Now, of those 30, 20 were made of brick, and 11 of those buildings were either courthouses or city halls throughout a number of states. I was really surprised by that. But then I started to think, all right, so slate, of course, right, but it's really expensive, a challenge to maintain. You'll probably break a couple every season. My first project working in construction was to repair a 1884 slate roof, and it is a real technical craftsmanship challenge. So I began to do some research then about using substitute materials based upon the Secretary of Interior standards and our own standards that we just published here in Cape May. So there's a brief, a 24-page brief that the Secretary of Interior published just this past year, updated it, that talks about substitute materials. And the first comment that I'd like to make from this says, substitute materials that closely match, quoting, the visual and physical properties of historic materials can be successfully used on many rehabilitation projects in ways that are consistent with the standards. But this is not a rehabilitation project. This is new construction. So a little bit later on, it says, the standards purposefully allow for the use of substitute materials when the use of original materials is not reasonably possible, such as in consideration of economic and technical feasibility or in new construction. So there's clearly I would say, a purposeful pathway designed by the Secretary of Interior standards to allow, in certain cases, substitute materials. So now let's look at what our local standards say, which were just published last year. On page 21, for non-contributing properties, which this would be, this is in the section on roofing. Roof materials should be compatible with the historic materials of the historic district and reinforce its architectural character. Composite or imitative roofing materials may be appropriate. So then I continued my little research project and tried to look at what were the best available imitation slate roof materials being currently manufactured in the United States. I found 6 of them. 3 of them appear, I don't want to name them, I don't think that would be appropriate. 3 of them in particular seemed extraordinarily real to me in terms of their imitative, well, I'm using contradictory terms here. They seemed authentic even though they were imitative. And the variation in the color starts to be appealing when we look at what you guys are presenting most recently, which is the first time I've seen it, is the different polychrome band in the roofing. I'm not certain whether you're looking at a different texture or a different color.
This would be a different texture
Yeah,
here.
different
but-
geometry.
So maybe a scallop as opposed to a...
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. These materials, I think, would lend themselves very much to that kind of aesthetic detailing. So I think what I'm trying to say is that I don't think we can make any decision on this today, because I would strongly recommend that we get some samples from a few, maybe 2 or 3 of these more higher quality imitation slate materials, compare them to some real slate, and also remember that they're going to be up 3.5 stories, so it's not like we can touch them. And the publication 16 about substitute materials from the Secretary of Interior standards talk quite a bit about the degree to which the appropriateness is also dependent upon proximity to being able to physically touch them, which we won't be able to because they'll be up 4 stories. So with all that said, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we align around what these roof materials ought to be, because other than that, I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Jake, you
Okay.
have anything?
Just that, our committee, our police department committee has gone over this ad nauseum, and we believe this is a great design. Additionally, our chairman and the review committee, John, have had quite a few meetings regarding this building, and the consensus seems that it seems to be good. So I would agree with those groups.
Kevin?
I'd just like to mention 2 things. One is I hope as you look at St. John Street and Lafayette Street that you kind of try and stick to the, what I'll call the standard light post that the city has throughout the historic district. I just think it's I think it should be a part of the planning of the city to continue to use that post whenever, especially when new construction comes into play. And also think it's consistent with what's been really proposed for the Franklin Street. That would sort of tie that all in and then tie it as it goes down Lafayette.
And I mean, we are only doing the building. The city has an engineer that's doing that. But I agree with you, and I'm hopeful that they're doing the same. And as you can see by the cut sheets that we gave you for the lights that we're putting on the building, we're really trying to keep in that flavor.
I think one of the things that just having seen the cut sheets, it didn't appear to me that there was a standard, and that's what started to get, my attention was I'd rather see sort of stick to the standard that already exists throughout the historic district of the city. Second thing is just, I do have to say, I did kind of like this little piece right here, the middle one on this cut sheet. And I don't know if you remember, but if you look at some of the old drawings of like New York City, Philadelphia, had that globe like that one with the word police.
That's,
Half the old precincts in New York have a globe that say police on them.
we are actually proposing them right here on the corner of the building. And we did the same thing in the city of Woodbury when we took an old bank and turned that into their police station. We did the same thing with those, with the globes that say police on them.
It would be a good idea to know that you were actually passing a police station,
Yes.
right? So,
Other than being, reading the sign, you can actually see it there, and it lets you know that. And yes, I think you're talking about like the street lights. And that's, I expect them to be matching that, and what we're putting on the building, we think is going to complement that. It's not the exact same thing, but we think they'll complement that style, so.
I mean, the ones that are out on the street level are the ones that most interest me.
Yes.
Consistent with the standard that we've used around the city, especially the historic parts.
And I'm pretty sure that's what they have in mind, but I'm sure Paul will make sure that happens.
outlining the site itself, are there plans for traffic control, a light or something
No,
at St.
no.
John and
It's just-
Lafayette?
It's
because
stop,
of
it
traffic?
doesn't warrant another traffic light at that location.
So it's still going to be the
There'll still be
usual
stop control coming out at,
difficulty
yes.
coming out?
They do have the modification for the right-hand turn lane on, I believe that's
On to St. John's.
on to St. John,
On Lafayette,
on Lafayette.
yeah.
The county.
It's just the
is putting
county
a
was working on that, I believe.
turning lane.
They've talked, I've talked about it. I think I've
Chris,
seen the plan. I can't put my fingers back on it. The contractor is looking for it,
Chris,
so I'm
The,
trying to.
the big problem, and I didn't want it to interfere with police vehicles, but the big problem always has been getting out of St. John onto Lafayette.
Well, luckily, the police vehicles have lights on top, and they stop traffic pretty good for them. So the police
Not if it's all blocked up in front of them, Paul, as
Well, that's-
as
that's
some
not gonna-
streets in town would indicate.
Yeah, that's not going to stop.
Well, let me just add a few comments as well. I think you've learned a lot of different opinions here, but they're coming together. Your mansard roof is rather large compared to the typical mansard roof that looks like it's maybe 2/3 of the, of normal width of a room below it. Is your third floor have extra high ceilings?
No, the whole reasoning behind mansard is get that additional story within the roof. In this case, the city is desirous down the road of installing solar panels on the roof. So we brought the outside of that up as a parapet so that the
Okay.
solar panels can be hidden behind that parapet and not seen.
Okay.
Because we know the HPC does not like the aesthetic of solar
Yeah,
panels.
that is good.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, this is a real third story, but
But there's a
But
parapet.
I understand you're
here we
Yes,
have a
hide
parapet.
solar
You're-
panel.
Hide the
That's
solar.
enough to hide panels.
Solar
Yeah.
panels, if and when the city puts the solar panels up there, you're not going to see them from the street,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Would the solar panels be part of the whole construction project?
Probably not, no. That would be something they would do later.
Okay. Discussion on the tower. I remember visiting a wonderful little town in Italy. Their bragging right was they had more towers per size of the town than any other town in Italy, like 13 of them. I can't remember the name of the town, but it was. Yes, that
I could make up any
that was the
number
biggest
of towns.
It was all the towns.
So frankly, I kind of
Santa
like the
Maria
idea
Chinese.
of having these towers. And of course, towers and fire, watching out for fires was almost like towers in old life-saving stations. You wanted to be able to get up because seeing is an important part of it. So I think
towers
that's
in Italy
appropriate.
is the
If it
one
was a
that's
little bit lower,
over.
I think that would be fine. What we call cresting on the top of it would be a nice touch, and having the high pieces on the end is appropriate. I would also agree that having cresting all the way around the building would really not be a good idea. That'd be an overkill. Without that tower, to me, the building looks like an inexpensive, lazy addition to the town, and the tower and the things you're doing make it look. I know it's a police station, but we would prefer that it didn't really try to look like a police station because we're proud of our police, but fortunately, we are a very safe town and proud of it. So I would like to see you stick with the tower, and probably you've been through a lot of these things already discussing for us. I think you might find still a majority opinion to have the tower, but maybe reduce it a little bit.
And we're definitely going to look at that and see what we can do.
So those are my comments. Do you have more questions for us?
I do.
From what you've been hearing?
I'll let you go first, Chief, and then I do have a couple questions for Mr. Test.
Certainly, I appreciate that candor. First and foremost, I want to thank this HPC for allowing us the time to sit here. And over the last few months, year or so, we've been kind of poking into certain meetings when Warren and John sit here, and I've been showing them the ideas at the permission of the mayor. And secondly, I also like to thank City Council and the mayor for allowing us to step forward early enough to be prepared for you now. This project, when I first met with the mayor in 2021, his first answer to me or promise to me was that we would work on this police department. We had just come out of the referendum with the fire department and the police department being separated by a third, referendum, if you want to say. And initially, the police department members, we were disappointed. However, my message to them at that time was stand by and stand down. There's no reason for us to get upset. This process will happen. There's a reason for everything. And I thought that the parking here would be just obnoxious with us and the fire department and the citizens coming here. So it actually was a godsend that it was taken the opposite way. Hating to spend more money than we need to because you're buying 2 generators, you're buying 2 sets of air conditioners for buildings that could be combined, but they just wouldn't work on this footprint. The residents spoke and we listened, and I think that was the most important part because they're the ones that are paying for it. I wouldn't want to put something on a spot that just was overkill and just took away from this corner or these corners. So Initially, like I said, we were disappointed. However, I think listening and waiting and being patient was the virtue. And I think that was important for the police department to be respectful of the residents and the members of council who made that decision. So we appreciate that. Secondly, we appreciate the time that it's taken and the money and energy. These conversations with these gentlemen at Robbie Conley's Architect are not cheap. But the mayor allowed us to enter in here. We originally started with Mr. Belasco and Mr. Vol, and then entering with Mr. Dietrich, which has also been a breath of fresh air because coming from an engineer side of things, he allowed me to look at it differently. He just told me to step back and look at this differerly. And you understand that we're coming from two homes. This police department is where I started and where I most likely would end my career, but second home was in West Cape May. So I have me also being Italian, like John, in that realm, we like to have our family together. So it's been very hard from an administration standpoint from past chiefs, Chief Sheehan, Chief Sorrentino, Chief Marino, having half your family on one side of the town and the other half here, just interacting with them daily has been difficult. This transition will allow us to enter back into that homely feeling and have all of our family in one home and all of our team members. It will allow whomever the chief is, past me, beyond me, to interact and be successful in daily operations. When we have major events, we're all in one place. We can muster, we can corral, and we can gather and protect this city the way it's supposed to be. This brick building is a staple. It's going to be the first thing people see before they see the library, the firehouse, the AME Church, the Harriet Tubman Museum. This, along with the park and along with the walking trails, is going to be a beautiful site once it's done. And the one thing that the mayor and this task force, they allowed me the ability to just kind of flow with it. John gave me a blank slate and said, here, make something work out of this, but he gave me some direction. But the one thing that this committee, this task force wanted was your approval. And I don't say that just because I'm sitting in front of you. That was first and foremost in our minds, that this building cannot go forward without you. Okay, you are the historians of this community. I don't know enough. Okay, you gentlemen have forgotten more than I know, respectfully. So when you guys put that energy in here, and if you see what you see here, it's because we listened to you and we knew these gentlemen knew what you were going to ask for. That's why it looks the way it is. I did ask for the second rendering of the building without the tower, because at first I was like, and it wasn't nothing more than a cost savings, because we looked at the money. I'm like, all right, where can I cut costs so that we could protect the residents and not have to spend so much money? That's not going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost some, but it does anchor that corner. Respectfully, James, Mr. Testa, I don't disagree with you, but I think it will.
I'm not anti-tower.
No, I know.
I just thought
Absolutely.
it was a big tower.
Absolutely. Like I said, I think, after I looked at the rendering without it, then I looked back at it, that looks like a cheap hotel, just like Mr. Carroll would say. It does not lend appreciation to the corner and to the time period that you gentlemen want this building to be built upon. And, the inside of this building will be modern as I can make it. The outside will look like it was there forever. And I think that, I think that's the important part, that Cape May does not change. It's a big building, trust me. And before we even stepped forward, I stepped out and spoke with the neighbors who live in that area. I spoke with the families that live in Broad Street Court, and they were very appreciative that we wanted to move there. They, obviously change is not always good, but they weren't against it in a sense. One thing that they did ask is for that area up on the roof, that community area, that we can invite the community, invite members of the public to come up and have an outside event with us or meet with us and look over the meadows, look over the walking trails, look over the playground. During we have 9-10 months of good weather here. There was weeks in December that it was, in the 50s and 60s, and we're good. When we speak about the traffic pattern and the flow of that area there, a little bit before Mr. Dietrich's time, we did meet with the county, and the mayor and the other engineer did discuss that turning lane, because it's very hard to get out or to get into St. John's when the traffic's, dinner time in this town, coming into town is very difficult, and that turning lane will allow that alleviation. It does not, at the current moment, allow the alleviation from St. John's onto Lafayette Street, but if I'm remembering correctly from my notes and my conversations with the mayor and with Mr. Church, they are going to be wiring underneath of that area there before we go and put paving on there for a possible light. So if the engineers and the studies that we're doing, if Mr. Dietrich says, hey, we need a light there, it's going to be pre-wired, if I'm correct, from the information that I have, pre-wired for that event. So you don't want to bundle a bunch of traffic lights up, but we'll be prepared for it if we need to add that, instead of ripping the road up, that we'll have a moratorium on it, that you can't rip it up for 5 or so years. So again, I appreciate your time with this, because this building is going to outlast all of us in this room. And I know that it's important for the city to get it right, because you only have one opportunity to do it right. The fire department had its bumbles, and we had a couple issues there, but it came together. But what I learned from that was, and respectfully, I learned from some of the mistakes that were made on that project, and I want to try to fix them and move forward. I've had that direct conversation with the manager, and he's still giving me specific instructions: just pay attention to detail and just don't overthink it, just make it work. So again, I appreciate all of your time for being here. The mayor, if he has any questions, he'll chime in, and John, I apologize for stepping in front of you.
Okay.
No problem. The only thing that I have is, Mr. Testa, you had said that you did have some comments about more detailed items. Since we're here, if you don't mind bringing them up, I'd like to note them now so we can.
Well, it looks to me like we're going to be having an ongoing discussion as things get filled in. I mean, our objective here will be to try and move this along. So our usual way of proceeding is to go forward with an advisory report, which the city then uses, in which we make the suggestions. It sounds like you'll probably be back. And if this were a hearing, a private hearing, we would have had detailed things like detailed site plans, landscaping plans, those kinds of things, which will be generated in the future. I suspect that we'll see that as the project moves forward. That's what I was referring to. Yeah, so the stuff that you would normally supply to the commission in connection with a private application.
And I assume that they'll come in front once they're finished their
And
work.
this looks like it's going to be a pretty organic process of.
Once we have, and these deals are being more brought, because they're working on them with the site plan of the park.
Right.
That'll probably kind of come together as we get ready to submit for the SHPO and CAFR application on the parks. You'll kind of get, I'll say, the site features when we move that forward.
No problem.
That end.
Yeah, that's what we would be looking for.
And regarding the streetscape thing, I think we will try to, the streetscape, especially St. John, and making the corner to the parking lot to the same streetscape that we're looking like, that we designed on Franklin Street, and how we came down Washington with, we'll probably try to tie some of that in, not so much on Lafayette, but definitely on St. John, because can't do too much on Lafayette because that's the county's domain, but we'll definitely try to tie some brick and the street lights that we can down St. John to have that look.
We can open this to the public if there's anybody in the public that did come wanting to make a comment.
You remember how
Meeting is
this
now open
works?
to the public.
Hello, my name is Roz Johnson. I live on Lafayette Street, and these renderings look absolutely beautiful. But the only thing I do agree with Mr. Testa, as just an ordinary resident that I'm speaking for myself, it seems as though the tower is definitely disproportionate to the size of the building. The police chief mentioned a homey, used the word homey. I don't find anything wrong with something that doesn't look, super auspicious or like, here I am. Sometimes buildings that are kind of blend in with everything can be just as beautiful as something with a very tall spire. I love the idea of the globe that says police. I think that's very throwback in time. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, and thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Roz. Make sure you take a look. Sorry, Mr. Carroll, but take a look at the other rendering without it. Kind of get your eyes on that when you get time before you leave, and just kind of look at how it might take I understand exactly what you're saying, but
Yeah.
it might take you back to where.
Higher isn't always better
True.
for me. Actually, from where I live, if you can believe it, I can enjoy the Cape May Point Lighthouse. I can see it. It takes 13 seconds for it to go around. And from where I live, I can see the Cape May Lighthouse. And of course, things have to be as tall as they need to be. I love the idea of that open space in the back. It's very community-minded, very environmentally beautiful. But it's just the idea that, do we always have to make things so grand, so over the top? Because most people, if you can believe it, aren't over the top. You know, most people just love a community that they're proud of, with a beautiful new police station. But to me, it definitely doesn't have to be with a tall tower. And, you know, a shorter tower, you know, maybe that's okay. So I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross.
I just have a quick question.
Please, Nate.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we know who you are.
I wasn't sure. Stacy Shan, Columbia Avenue. My question is on the height of this building. Is this height of the building against our standards on the height of what buildings should be? Are we going? Is it larger than what a normal person would be able to build?
The height in that area, I believe, is 35 feet high, but that does not apply to roof elements and ornaments. And, you know, the tower would really just be considered not the whole height of the building, but something that just gives it anchoring the corner, the things
Right.
that have been brought out.
And I'm not really concerned about the height of the tower, because like you're saying, it's just like ornamental or something like that. But the building itself with the roof, is that going to be higher than is allowed in that area?
The towers, I think you said it was going to be 50 feet above ground. Actually, the tower on the building known as the Abbey, the John McCrary House, is actually about 60-plus feet high. So this is not even as tall.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the tower. I'm just talking about the building height itself, not including the tower.
We should have put some.
I'm trying to go with my, I do not, I'm trying to go with my memory, and I believe,
John usually takes
The 20, you have to scale 25 to the,
wait a second.
height to the Manson roof, from ground to Manson roof.
We're 25, 10 here. So we're probably close to 40 feet.
So and what is the height for that area?
40 feet.
It's 35, right? Is what you just said?
So that's a zoning issue, depending upon what zone this is in and what building type it is. So that's not the HPC's purview, that's zoning, so I can't really answer that question.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public? I will close the public.
San Gimignano.
We've already
That's the place.
identified.
There used to be 72 towers in that town.
I will close the public portion then. I think the issues that have come up, and this will be put into a motion, and you also will get a copy of our report, preliminary approval for a consideration for application. And so we're talking about the height of the tower, the existence of the tower. We're talking about the
Roof materials. Roof materials.
which is a real big one, and we're also talking about lighting fixtures that are surrounding it. So those will go into ours. Would somebody?
But since you always make me make these motions, I'll make a motion that the committee discuss the features that Tom just mentioned, the roofing materials, the lighting, and the nature of the height of a tower and its design in a way that may be different from what we see in the plan as presented. Those would be the 3 points we would cover in the advisory report.
I'll second that motion.
The motion's been moved and second. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Hammerin. Thank you.
The motion passes unanimously. We will be, I'll be working on that report, and we'll make sure that you get copies of it as well as the city manager and the city.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much
Yes,
for your
thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, appreciate you coming out here for the special meeting and to help us move this forward. So look forward to getting this finished and
Okay,
seeing you all out there at the ribbon cutting. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the board today? We can't do it. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, everybody.